Hi, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon session. My name is Rob Sawers. I'm the Principal Training Consultant on the Customer Enablement team at ArcXP.
And I'm Kirti Kamtikar. I'm the Group Product Manager for Content Products.
So,
Okay. We can clap. We can clap. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's lovely to see you all here today. Today we're going to be talking about optimizing your content workflows. Now, my role as part of the customer enablement team, I work with customers as they're onboarding onto the ArcXP platform. Sometimes I also work with existing clients who are attempting new projects or adapting to some kind of organizational change, a new technology, administrative changes, things like that. Now, in my experience these times, onboarding and adapting to other changes and other projects, this is an excellent time to reevaluate your existing workflows and see what you can do better. Sometimes this means fixing a long-standing pain point that your teams have had to deal with. Sometimes this could mean developing some customized tool to give your teams new capabilities. And it could also mean reorganizing your teams, retraining your teams, things like that. But often, it's actually just as simple as taking a closer look at some of the existing functionalities you already have access to in the technology platforms you use. And keeping a keen eye out for new developments coming down the product roadmap. So today, we're going to be showing you some of these workflows, and I want you to think about how you can apply some of these in your teams at your organizations and what kind of benefits they would bring. Speaking from my experience working directly with clients, I'm going to be taking on most of the examples of existing workflows that have been used with proven effect and given proven results. And Kirti, from her vantage point on the product team, will be telling us about some of the exciting new features coming down the product roadmap. Okay. So today's presentation is going to be divided into 3 parts. We're going to start by talking about content creation, then we're going to talk about planning and workflow, and we'll finish up by talking about content usage. Now, before we move on to the content creation, I just want to say this is meant to be a bit of a discussion. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. We're happy to answer them. I know we have simultaneous translation here as well, but if it's helpful, yo hablo español y puedo traducir para el grupo. También falo portugués si tem brasileiros aqui, não sei, mas tudo bem. We also, as the presentation goes on, you're going to see we have some survey questions that we'd love to get your feedback on. We're going to show QR codes that'll get you into the survey that you can do on your own phones, and we're going to keep the survey open a little while afterwards to keep hearing your feedback. So please do follow along and participate. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so we can jump right into some of the first workflows. We're going to start with a really basic one. So this is story templates. Story templates, of course, are not new in themselves. We've always had those in Composer. And basically, templates are one of the easiest ways that you have at your disposal to streamline workflows. Imagine without templates, your journalists, when they start a new story, they have to add in all the metadata fields, make the right settings, tags, SEO, everything like that. So with templates, of course, you can streamline all that and make it so that with one click, your journalist can start working and they already have all that metadata and they can just focus on what they're really good at, which is journalism. Or if we're not in a newsroom context and this is a marketing company, I know there's a range of different industries and verticals that our clients work in. So sometimes my terms, I should just pause and say, sometimes my terms will change depending on whether we're talking about content creators or journalists or video editors. So these terms are meant to be sometimes interchangeable. So yeah, templates, what I always tell customers when they're going through training and we're designing their workflow, I just say, think of every scenario your newsroom might encounter. Is it breaking news? Is it a big sports match? Is it elections? Something else, opinion stories. You have columnists, you have freelancers. There's lots of different use cases. Think of all of them and make a template for each one. Super easy to search, it's super easy to find. It's not going to slow you down to have a longer list of templates. You can just get directly where you're going to. Now, what we have added, what is new, very recently, Composer has added a new admin experience and a new user experience. So the admin experience that we're going to see here is that in Composer, we're looking at the template management screen, and they've just chosen a new default template. So anytime anyone starts a new story, they're going to have access to that. Also, just wanted to point out really fast, we can still see our inactive templates. Okay, so here's an example from the past election season. Well, maybe for the next elections, we want to see what our teams did then, and we can build from there. Now, the kind of user experience, maybe your writer, content creator, journalist, what they can do is they have that default there, but they can also go through the list of templates and star the ones that they're going to use most frequently. So here is an opinion story. With one button, they've set it as their starred template, and now they're already working on their first opinion story. So we think that this satisfies a variety of requirements, right? Organizations as a whole need to streamline processes and protocols, and here they're able to establish defaults. Meanwhile, average users are still able to customize their experience and make sure they're going to get just to what they need most. Oh, yes. I think, well, so you would have to, so yeah, we do have some analytics tools. Right now we're using Pendo to see about, where people are clicking, what features they're using. How we make that available to clients, I think that would be another conversation. But we do have analytics that look at what's being used. Now, if you know that there's something that isn't being used, we have that list of inactive templates. But that's a very good question. I think that data exists somewhere, and it's just about how we communicate that out to clients. Any other questions? Now, while we're here talking about templates, I am going to be giving you a couple little pro tips along the way, things that I've found that come up very frequently during trainings. And one of them is just to set the story subtype. So this links into the Page Builder editor app, where you have templates for your different stories, but you can also have subtypes of those. So maybe a breaking news story has a different subtype than an opinion story or weather or whatever it is. If you match your subtype to that template, this is already streamlined in the workflow. So no one has to remember to get this special field so that it shows up in Page Builder with the right layout and display elements. Okay, so the next workflow we're going to look at, another basic one. This is embedding images and videos in your Composer stories. It seems obvious, but it really does bring your stories to life. In Composer, you can embed your digital assets, social media posts, HTML blocks, and much, much more. There's lots of design elements you can add, tables, dividers, all kinds of things, but some of them link to other apps within the system, like Video Center and Photo Center. Now, once you embed that content in your story, you also have the ability to modify its promotional content fields. So you can go in and change the headline or the caption on an image. That won't touch the original. The original one is still as it was. It's the canonical version, but in this story, you have that ability to change the metadata. And this is to kind of align with your content strategy, also to align with your SEO strategy. Now, say your organization uses some bespoke content type, something that we don't have out of the box. That's fine. On Composer, you can develop on top of the embeds that we already have, and you can develop your own custom power-ups to give all kinds of, to open the doors for all kinds of integrations with your other platforms. So in this example, a journalist in a newsroom is going to very easily add a video, an image, and a tweet. And notice they just create a space between two paragraphs, hover over the icon they want, and already we're looking at a modal for a pop-up modal for Video Center, and now we've added that video. Scroll down a bit, they're going to add an image. You just hover over the image icon. Now we're already looking at Photo Center. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to clients that are moving on to the ArcXP platform that say, oh my gosh, we used to have to do like 10 different steps and copying codes and all kinds of things. Here it's just 1 or 2 clicks. Here with our social embed, they're going to render a tweet, and that's going to show up in the story. So like I said, these are some of the most used examples, but really we found with our analytics software, like I mentioned, that HTML blocks are the most used. So we're very curious to hear what kinds of tools you use with HTML, what kind of customized things you're building, what kind of widgets you're putting into your stories. We'd love to hear that in the feedback in the survey. Okay. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kirti to tell us about some things coming down the roadmap.
Cool. Thank you, Rob. All right. Let me start by asking you all a question. How many of you here are representing organizations that manage multiple websites? Cool.
Well.
Some of you are thinking, that's good too. Okay, cool. So let me take an example of one of your organizations, or for that matter, any multi-site organization that manages websites at global or national level or regional and local level. And now let's walk through a scenario where this organization is covering a story that has global audience. Olympics could be a great sporting event, or even football World Cup. So there is this organization covering that story at the global level, but then you also can have national websites providing you additional details for their particular sites, for their particular audiences. For example, they could talk about ticket prices in the relevant currency. Or it could even be imagery or videos that highlight their team's performances. How are their teams doing? Celebrating their national heroes. Let me give you another example. So, coronavirus that we can all relate to, and fortunately we are out of that pandemic situation. But during that time, local websites could provide us information about testing centers, vaccination, and then lockdowns, mask mandates and such. Similarly, if you are talking about elections, what Rob was saying in his previous example, there can be local sites that cover on-the-ground updates. And then finally, another example I wanted to give you was about natural disasters, storms, hurricanes. There is national coverage, global coverage, but you need that on-the-ground updates, right, about evacuation policies, rescue operations. So what I'm trying to get at with all these examples is there is a need where you want to tell the story at a global level, but then you also want to highlight certain aspects of it, certain flavors of the story for your audiences visiting certain websites. And I'm very happy and proud to share with you all that we have story variants, which will do exactly that. Story variants are a new way to manage multiple versions of a single story and then be able to share different pieces of that story slightly differently to the audiences based on the websites they're on. So essentially, what you can do, all right, what you can do with story variants is you can add local flavor to your global stories. Cool. Now let me show you how you can actually do this. The first thing is you need to enable it in settings, and as it shows up there, it's in private beta, meaning if and only if this is enabled for your organization in your environment, you'll be able to experience this. But then, like any other standard composer content element, you can check uncheck this little variant zone. That is actually the secret behind how story variants are going to come to life. But once you turn it off, you can go to the next step, which is adding a variant zone. So now let's say you're talking about that global organization covering this story at a global level. You go to the main story, you go to the compose tab, and there you can add a variant zone. What do you mean by variant zone, right? Variant zone, as I said in the previous slide, it's a special content element which designates a section of your story where you or other authors, other content creators can go in and custom create content for that specific section to meet the needs of different audiences based on the website they're on. And you can actually have up to 10 variant zones in your main story. And the way to add a variant zone is, again, standard composer way. You can either use the inline toolbar Or you can use the content elements menu. And there you decide which sections you want to designate to custom tailor for your audiences. Cool. Now let's talk about creating variants. Now that you have added variant zone, you can actually create a variant out of it. So you need this functionality enabled. You need to be able to see that variant zone. So the previous step is really important. You go in, you give it a name, and then you update or select the websites that you want. So what I'm saying is, if you have a very specific flavor for the American audience, let's say there are 2 websites, the Chicago ones, you're creating this experience of content for that specific audience, for the American websites. On the right, what you're seeing is our brand new variant editor. And just a sneak peek of what our future of Composer is going to look like. Our teams are working hard to continue to modernize Composer experience. Just something I wanted to share with you all. What you can do in the variant zone, as you can see, only the variant zones are editable. Everything else in the story will be read-only. But still, you can see your variant zone in the context of the main story. And then you or other content creators can go in the variants and update. You can add text and use standard formatting, or even you can add media such as images, video, or you can even add an HTML element there for your specific variant. So this is how you can have multiple authors contribute to a story. Variant zones can be edited independently of the parent story without locking the parent story. So that is something that we're really, really excited for, the possibilities that it's going to unlock. And it's not just text. You can also create these variants for featured media and tags. And tags are more additive versus featured media where you're adding a key for a slot. It's going to override what your main story's featured media for that slot looks like. What I really wanted to highlight here is story variants can be really powerful, especially for large organizations. It can help in ways to optimize your content sharing and your general content workflows. So we're very excited about this. And just as a caveat, I brought this up before, it is in private beta. There is a technical behind-the-scenes dependency on Draft API. For you to be able to leverage this functionality, you need to be on the latest and greatest Draft API version, which provides this robust data store, supports story variants, and it has a bunch of other capabilities as well. And because Draft API is sort of, Composer's backend, we need to have this enabled. Our publishing platform team is hard at work in making sure they're rolling it out to environments sooner. But just wanted to let you know that that is a dependency for us to be able to make this generally available. But if you are excited about this and you feel that this can really help you in your content workflows, please reach out to us through your TAMs. We would love to hear your use cases. All right, let me talk about individual contributor permissions. We know that many of our customers work with freelancers and third-party users who contribute on a regular basis to content teams, to the content desk for our organizations. And they would love to be in Composer, but the challenge there is, as you know, today, if you're in Composer, you can pretty much access all the stories, and you can imagine why admins wouldn't be thrilled about it, right? So we know what the ask here is. You want us to be able to restrict or lock down access for these individual contributors so that they can only access, view, and edit stories that they are assigned as the author. Make sense? Rob, why don't you share that story I think you were mentioning?
Oh, well, yeah, so I've worked a lot with clients around the world, but particularly in Latin America. And I've heard many concerns voiced about the ability to come into a story that anyone in the newsroom can see content before it's published. So this actually gets into concerns that kind of transcend just workflow concerns and get into issues of safety for journalists. Investigative teams, reporters working in areas where maybe they're facing certain state or police repression or threats from criminal groups. They really do need absolute security with their content, especially in that moment before it's published. After it's published, well, then the whole world knows about it. But That's why I kind of wanted to kind of stress the importance of this, that it's not just some other box to check, it's not just some other feature. In some contexts, this is actually a very kind of grave concern.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. This capability will be available end of Q2 or early Q3. Survey time. Why don't you all take out your cell phones and take a moment to respond to this question? And you may see there are multiple questions. Let's go easy. Let's do one question at a time, even if you see more. We love all that feedback, but let's do it in installments. How could individual contributor permissions transform the workflows of teams at your organization? Wave or give me a thumbs up when you're done, so I know how many of you are actually done.
I think we can give them a few moments to type their responses and then move on to the next section,
Cool.
I suppose.
All right. We also have another question that follows, so you can
that's right,
take
there is. Yeah, I forgot
take a
about that.
moment, and while you're at it, please provide responses to question. What functionalities would your team want to be able to restrict access to in Composer? So we understand, yeah, you want to log stories, you don't want them to get access to all your stories, but what else? And you can hear the other breakout room is also having fun. Cool. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, so take all the time you need with the survey questions. We're going to move on to the next section, planning and workflow. So, okay, we've got our content, we've created our story, our video, whatever it is. Now we need to think about our coverage in general. Where are our team's resources? When do we have gaps in the publishing schedule? So let's look at some of those tools now. The first one I want to tell you about is the calendar view, which is a new feature in WebSched. This is actually, we're really proud to respond to a very common request in the ARC Ideas portal, which was to add a calendar view. So we're always happy when we can deliver those functionalities that speak directly to those client concerns. Now, what the calendar view will kind of do is that it allows you to focus on the content that needs your attention right now, rather than just a deluge of all the content that's in the system. You can visualize when content is scheduled for distribution and publication. This will help you be aware of what your teams are working on, and then, of course, you can see the gaps in your coverage. Now, in this video, we can see that maybe this is a desk editor, a planning producer. It's often called different things, but usually a newsroom or a content production unit has some sort of planning role. So here, they still have all of the functionality that we've always known and loved in WebSched. You have your stories view, now called the list view. From here, you have all of your filters, a story card with lots of information, and we just saw flash on the screen that ability to pitch and create tasks. But now we've switched over to the one-day view. You can focus on what's on your plate today or tomorrow or something coming up. We can also switch to the 7-day view, and I'll say you can actually change how many days we see, but we're going to see the whole week at a time. You can drag stories from one time to the next. This will update the story's planned ready time. And when you click on a story, you get this story card with all of that same information that you had back in the list view. So we're not taking away any tools or functionalities, we're just merely adding things that have been requested by a lot of our clients. Now, okay, so we've planned our content, we know when it's going to come about, but we have to move content around the system. We have to communicate between our teams and make decisions about curation and where things are going to be seen, where things are going to be surfaced to our readers. So this is where pitching comes into the story. Pitching is, you're just suggesting content to be used on some other place. In WebSched, we have two main ways of pitching. Pitching to a platform and pitching to a publication. So let's go through the differences, because they're fairly similar in their concept, but they have different use cases. So with platforms, think of maybe your homepage editors team, or a social media team that curates all of your different social media stories. They are always on the lookout for hot news stories, anything that's trending, anything that's going to rise to the top. But they don't necessarily have content of their own. You might not publish a story directly to the homepage. You would publish it to the news section and then have that curated onto your homepage. So that's what platforms are for. Publications Again, similar in kind of the concept, but this is more used for integration with a print CMS for a newspaper or with a newsletter system. Think of a weekend magazine, any kind of other product. And the key difference here is that you're going to be pitching to a specific edition date, right? The homepage, 24 hours, you can change it. Social media, you can post whenever. But an actual magazine or newspaper, you have to decide, is it going out in today's edition or tomorrow's? So what we're going to see in these workflows here, we're going to start with the platform. We're also going to see the publication. So here, an MMJ, multimedia journalist, has just finished editing the video that they've just uploaded. They go down to pitch to a platform, and they choose the social media team. They could add a note or mark it as breaking news if they wanted. And now we see over in WebSched, the social media editor gets a notification that there's new items available. They refresh the screen, and now they're looking at this pitch. The cool thing about this is that then they can update the pitch status. Here they say, yes, we're going to use this story. Thank you very much. And they can communicate that back to the teams. So it completes the loop of collaboration and communication. Pro tip. While we're here in that screen, that same user interface of reviewing the pitches, this is an excellent way to structure your morning editorial meeting. Everyone comes into the meeting, bring this up on the monitor. There's no need to put this into a spreadsheet or print it out on pieces of paper or anything like that. Just adjust your filters, and each editor can go through their pitches and decide with the team which ones they're going to use. All right, now let's talk about pitching to a newsletter. So this is the pitch to publication workflow that I mentioned a moment ago. So a writer is working on their story. Maybe it's published already, maybe not. It can be in any kind of status. They're going to come to the panel here on the right, and they have publication pitches. They're going to click on the publication they want. In this case, it's the daily newsletter. They can choose which section of the newsletter they're going to drop it in, and then which day. Then, on the other side, the newsletter editor working in WebSched, they have their view, they go to the correct date, and they see, oh, we have a new story that's been pitched. All they have to do is drag it to the section where they want it to go, and then they click the lock button, and then they're done. Now, there's actually more going on here than meets the eyes. There's things going on behind the scenes. So that action of clicking the lock button, can be tied to a webhook notification that initiates, an API transaction to fetch the content and send it to this newsletter system, maybe MailChimp or something like that. But also think print integration. This could be a print CMS, right? So we'll talk a bit more about WebSched events and notifications and webhooks a little later on, but I did want to call that out, that it's more than just things you see in the user interface. Okay. Another thing, when we're talking about triggers and automation and these types of events that happen in WebSched, we're also going to be talking about tasks. Maybe the same assignment editor or desk editor is going to need to be assigning tasks to their different teams and need a way to track it. All of that you can do from within WebSched. Tasks can be created manually. Tasks can be created automatically based on triggers. It just depends how frequently you'll need them and whether you want that automation or that extra customizability. There's one workflow in particular that I think demonstrates the power of tasks and also how it kind of integrates the different teams that are all working on the same story. So this is the associated tasks workflow. It's a multi-app integration. We have workers in WebSched, Photo Center, and in Composer, and actually there would be a fourth one, which could be Slack, Microsoft Teams, email, anywhere you receive notifications. So in this example, the editor is going to manually create a task directly from WebSched. Remember, we can create task templates. So if you always need photo requests from your photographer team, create a template here where it's already set to photo requests. It goes to the photographer team. You just choose your deadline and customize a bit of information. Maybe add some special instructions if need be. Okay, now the photographer working in Photo Center, they've received the assignment, maybe on Slack on their phone. They've gone and taken their pictures of the sporting event or whatever it is, and then they have to upload their photos. What they're going to do is add that task ID into the metadata of the photos. And what that does is automatically, once you save that, So here they're copying the task ID that they received, they're adding it to the metadata, and what that's going to do is it's going to take all of those images that were taken by the photographer and put them in a dedicated lightbox that's specific to the coverage of this story. So here we see a lightbox, the name of the lightbox is the task ID, and we have the stories that are relevant just to this task. Moving on, we have the reporter who's covering the story in Composer. Notice they're going to hover over image and go into Photo Center. But the key difference is in the last example, it just went to the view of all of the images in Photo Center so they can browse through. But here, it went directly to that lightbox that was dedicated to the coverage of this story. So it really ties everything together in a really efficient way. One other thing I'd like to talk about here is tagging. So we often think of the kind of the main taxonomy of your website, the main way you divide content and publish it is through sections. Tags offer an alternative way of organizing your content, and for the reader, the visitor to your website, it's an alternative way to experience that website and to navigate and to discover new content. So it's really a way to engage your readers in a pretty easy, low-effort way. So it's going to drive traffic around your website. Once they're already there, they have other ways of finding things rather than just navigating through the main sections. Also, since you can add tags on the fly and keep updating your tag manager kind of database, you're going to be able to react really quickly to emerging trends and breaking news, right? A word that no one had ever heard of a few weeks ago and is now headline news, you're going to add a tag, and then it'll be, your website will adapt to these new conditions. And you can also design your workflow around this and plan it into what your teams are going to be doing. So in this example, an administrator who has access to global settings is going to add a tag into the tag manager. They write in the word Ukraine. It'll immediately create a slugified version, which is lowercase and no punctuation. And now it's in the system. Next, your engagement editor, they're going to be looking around for stories and trying to find ways of getting more engagement with their readers. So they can go into the metadata of this story that's about the tragic war in Ukraine, and they add that tag since it's already been added to Tag Manager. Lastly, your homepage editor is going to be working on various collections, which is something we'll come to in just a while. But what you can do with collections is pull in a feed of content that's been tagged. So you're going to kind of get a hybrid of manual curation and automatic curation based on tags. So these three steps kind of demonstrate some of the capacities that you have with tagging. Over to you.
Thank you, Rob. All right, question time. How many of you here have used WebSketch tasks? Okay. Oh. And how many of you have heard about WebSketch tasks? That's a trick question. He just talked about tasks, right? So all hands up, right? I just wanted to say this, that I'm pretty sure you all have experienced or heard about WebSketch tasks in the context of content, stories, photos. But we want to bring that capability to Page Builder Editor, starting with pages. So think about this. If you have created a page or updated a page and you want it approved, reviewed from someone, that's the use case I'm talking about. We want to empower your editors, marketers, to get this request reviewed from legal, design, brand, so that the published content on your site meets the needs of your organization. So with WebSketch tasks for pages in Page Builder Editor, you will be able to create and view tasks in Page Builder. That is a first, because as I said, till now, WebSketch tasks were only tied to Composer and Photo Center. But now they're being taken to the world outside of content. And that is how we want to streamline our content process management. With WebSketch tasks, we want you to streamline your workflows. And the clicker works. Okay, streamline your workflows with integrated tasks. This functionality is expected to be available in Q3. Cool? All right, again, this is something that we have heard from many of you. We know that you want better access to WebSked events. Specifically, WebSked notification trigger events, for example, task creation or task completion or pitching and such. And we know that historically it has been WebSked webhooks. We also know that some of our clients have been really creative in using these webhooks and applying it to their use cases, to their scenarios, to extend Arc beyond Arc, like to be able to connect with other external systems to make their end-to-end workflows work well. And I'm now going to come to you, my friend. We met yesterday, and he really talked about an experience and how his team has been doing an amazing job with WebSked webhooks. Can we have a microphone, please? Thank you. Can you please introduce yourself? Feel free to speak from here or on the stage. Thank you.
Is turning it on.
Hello, I see. Hi, I'm Vicente. I'm from Metro World News. Thank you. Yes, we have used a lot the WebSked events for do a lot of things. One of the most basic things is the push notification, for example. We use from Composer directly on WebSked, pitch a platform, then goes directly through the API, and then just send to Firebase. This is our provider for the push notification, and in just a few seconds, we have an instant push notification. We don't need to go to another tool. We don't need to go to another place. We just need to go in WebSked, in Composer, and do it by that way. We also do for, let's say, the social media. On Facebook, we have a third-party platform that's called Deliberate, that it's basically queue all the content that we send. So every journalist, every editor that we have, they don't actually need to go through Facebook or Instagram to post a content. They just pitch a platform, and automatically it sends a queue. And the editors just decide which content goes first, and it publishes automatically. Also, what else for Instagram? We have the creative content design automated with WebSked. It's going to be better because later I'm going to show you a few examples more visually. I'm going to do a demo over there. And here in platform pitches, you select Instagram, then through our platform, you go there, and basically it shows you all the design. You can post it directly through Instagram or make a few customizations. So that would be a few examples of how we do.
Sure. Thank you so much. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Big round of applause for Vicente for sharing his workflows. And again, if you heard, he's going to talk about some of those examples and demo them after. So please make sure to attend and follow more details on that. Cool. So now as you saw, the need is real. We know that many of you are investing this extra time in getting the systems to work. So we thought, why not make it a little better for you and provide you some support? So we are introducing WebSked events and pushing them into IFX. IFX, if you've not heard about it, not just 3 random letters put together, it means Arc's integration framework, which will let you extend, integrate, and customize your business logic. I'm pretty sure your engineering teams will love it. They will be excited about it because they can then custom create or build these custom integrations between WebSked and your third-party systems, such as business process management tools, systems that are external to Arc. And all of that in Arc Secure and hosted SaaS. So Vince, this is already in Sandbox. It's pretty fresh. It's going to be in production next week. And if you want to know more about IFX, Ryan Gladstone, who's the director for publishing platform, is going to talk about that tomorrow. Extensibility with IFX for Arc. So please, please definitely go and watch that session. And Ryan, if and when you listen, I definitely made a plug for you. Cool. Time for a quick survey question.
So we're curious, what types of tasks would your teams want to track using WebSked's task triggers and notifications? Our teams often have, copy editing tasks. We saw in this example a photo request, oftentimes a video request. Maybe it needs legal review before it can be published. But those are just a few examples, and I know there are more out there, so we'd love to hear.
Cool. I'll pass it over to you, Rob.
Okay. Okay, so we've created content, we've planned our content, and we've figured out the gaps in our coverage. Now we need to get our content out there to our readers. So I'm gonna start by talking about collections. I mentioned them briefly in the last section, but let's go into a little bit more detail about collections. At a very simple level, a collection is just a list of stories, and it lives in WebSCED. But there's a lot of ways that there's a lot of things we can do with them, and mostly we can be populating blocks in Page Builder with this content. So you can on your homepage you can have editors picks, or today's top 10, or most read stories, things like that. You could also have collections just based on topics, right? You can create your own custom themes for certain events or scenarios. But often we think of it in terms of occupying a part of your homepage or part of a story template, that kind of thing. So this is going to tie together the content creation apps, WebSCED, and then Page Builder. Now, I will say a little asterisk there, theoretically, and not theoretically, but we can actually take collections and use them elsewhere besides our Page Builder. So if you're a headless customer and you don't use Page Builder, you can still use collections and access those API endpoints to fetch the content and pull it elsewhere. In this example, though, I'm going to be talking about using it in Page Builder. So the reporter, as they're working on their story, they go to the panel here on the right in Composer, and they add to a collection. This is the one called Homepage Top Zone. That's all they have to do. They can continue working. They can move on to their next story. They did not have to take time out of their day to go into Page Builder or go into WebSCED. It was really just a couple clicks. Next, we have a content editor, maybe a homepage editor of some kind, I don't know. They're going to be watching the collections in WebSCED. Now here, they're rearranging stories. They're pinning stories to the top of the list. And while they're here, they can also go into the configuration of the collection. Oh, I'm sorry, I stepped ahead. They can also go here and change the promotional content on each story. So we have the canonical version that the journalist created in Composer, but here they can change the title, description, and lead art just in this one context of the collection. Again, to align with your content strategy, maybe your SEO strategy, things like that. They can also go into, as I started to say, the configuration of the collection, and they can change certain properties about how it's going to act, whether it publishes itself automatically or requires user interaction, whether content expires automatically, or if you want to curate the list yourself. Lastly, the homepage editor, who's living in Page Builder, they're looking at the different areas of their homepage, the different blocks, and the different lists of content. Here, we can see we have an international news kind of section being shown on the homepage, and all they have to do is swap out the ID. Oops. Okay, sorry, I went back. They have to swap out the ID, update that list, and it'll show the new content. So again, with just a few clicks, they've curated new content on their website. While we're here, a little pro tip, really the kind of the most advanced way of using collections is combining these sort of manual curation tools with the automatic ones. So if you pin content at the top, and then also use dynamic curation, but dynamic backfill, whereby you can pull in more content into a collection based on a tag, a combination of tags, or a section, or a combination of sections, right? So this is really kind of the advanced level user is going to be pinning and using dynamic curation. Now, we've had collections for a while. They're one of the most popular features across Arc. A lot of people use them. Even, like I said, customers that don't even use Page Builder will use them. But what we've recently enabled is now multi-site collections. So here, content from any website can now be published on a collection that goes to any website. In the past, so you say you had website A and website B. Content from A could only go to website A and vice versa. So all you have to do now is in the content itself, when you are in the circulation selector, you're deciding which websites and sections you're going to be publishing this to. Just make sure you include those other websites. Then, in the collection, make sure you also add those websites there, and then your content can go across your different the websites of your enterprise. So what that looks like, back in that one screen of the configuration of the collection itself, we have your primary website, but then you can add your additional websites. So that's the key. And another pro tip, I would be remiss if I gave a talk about workflow and page builder without mentioning linking. This is one of my favorite tools. I always recommend it to clients I've worked with. Probably to the point of being annoying, but it really streamlines a lot of things. It saves your homepage editors and your site administrators tons of time. Some people, or sometimes you can get the impression that linking is really just used for navigation elements. Maybe your header or the footer, or like a navigation menu. But you can also use it for content as well. So if you have a list block, here in my example, before I had the international news, that might be surfaced on your homepage, but then also on an article template, right? Something like that. So it can be used in lots of different places. Rather than having to go into each one and make changes, why don't you just link them all back to a parent copy, kind of the canonical version of it, and then anytime you publish changes on that original page, that'll replicate all around the system. It'll save lots of time. And one little kind of extra thing that I would recommend is all of those relationships you have of linked blocks, the kind of child instances will be scattered around your websites and templates. But the parent version, we usually recommend you put that on a separate page. You can call it the fragments page or something else, the linking page, whatever you want to call it. And that's where you can administer all of those parent blocks. So in one place, you can change your alert bar, your header, your footer, your collection list, all of that. Okay, so Page Builder, or the other rendering engine that you use headlessly, this is what we think of as the main destination for our content. It goes to your website. But there's also other downstream locations where we can export content to, getting that great content that your teams have created and getting it out into the world. So again, back to this topic of print and newsletter integration. Earlier we saw the demo. I'm not going to show you pitching again because we've already seen that. But let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of different ways that you can integrate your print CMS or your newsletter system with the content we have in ARC. So we've talked about pitch to publication, that workflow where they pitch to the newsletter. This is really kind of, I would say it's my favorite. But because we use WebSked's user interface and we have the ability to really get it down to the details of choosing where things go and when we export that content out. It also takes advantage of WebSked's webhook notification so that you can integrate it with other systems very easily. Now, another option is the Composer send to print model. What we do is we go into the settings in Composer and enable a button, which is going to show up on your screen, that says send to print. So the reporter, when they're working on their story, they click one button and it's gone. It sends it over to the print CMS. And that is by far the simplest workflow. If you don't want to retrain your teams or have them, get used to some new kind of complicated workflow, one button. You could train that in 5 seconds rather than doing a whole workshop on it. So that's if you want to keep things really simple. The last option is an automated feed. Any story that gets created in Composer and then updated, that will be sent automatically downstream to that other system. So the advantage is that it's quite simple. Your journalists don't have to do anything extra. It does mean, though, that those decisions you make about curation, where to place this, if you want to take these articles, all of that, that's going to happen in some other user interface. That's going to happen in some other program. So I just wanted to call that out, that there's sort of pros and cons to each one. Now, if you're a client that's onboarding with the team, you'd be working with me in the customer enablement, and we would walk through your business needs, and we would kind of land on which is the best use of these tools to meet what you need to do. But there's actually other ways that we can integrate content and get it out of the system that Kirti is going to tell us about now.
All right. Let's meet one of our newest products from the ArcXP product family, ArcXP Exchange. The mission for ArcXP Exchange is to provide a robust framework for supporting both inbound content ingestion and outbound content syndication. I'm pretty sure many of our customers work with content from external data providers, and sometimes it can be tricky, it can be a little challenging, and then customers also have their own data needs. That's why we are bringing flexible inbound feeds. We'll start off with some common out-of-the-box providers. Any guesses which one we'd do first? Washington Post feeds. So that's already in Sandbox. It should be in production, available soon. And we'll have a bunch of others that will follow. But in addition, we'll also provide you a platform-supported way of creating your own custom integrations in case you have needs beyond what we already provide. So if you have custom integrations, you can build them with IFX. If you say custom integrations, we say IFX. Remember this. Ingest ongoing data feeds into Arc in an easy, reliable, and extensible manner. So our focus primarily for the rest of the year is inbound feeds, but we know there are other things and we've been thinking about them that's already on our radar, wanted to get it out there. It's something that's coming later in the year or early next year, but the other side of things, right? Not the incoming, but the outbound. We know that you need to be able to push data to external services downstream, and you want that done in a flexible, manageable manner. And so we'll have improved push feeds and standardized templates to support some of the common integrations, such as Apple News, Send to Print, which are some of the top-of-the-mind integrations we know. You can easily push Arc data to downstream services and support extended integrations with our out-of-the-box support. But obviously, if you have needs beyond what we support out of the box, you say custom integrations, what do we say? IFX. We say IFX. All right. So here we have our, is that our final question, Rob?
I think it is. There might be one more in the survey, actually,
Sure.
of just extra
Please
feedback.
take a moment
but,
to answer this question. And while we are at it, I wanted to take a moment to share with you. This is the amazing team. These are the faces of product managers who are behind these products. And we really appreciate all the time we get to chat with you to learn your use cases. If you have any questions about anything that we spoke about today, or you're interested in trying out something that's coming on the roadmap, your feedback, please do not hesitate. We're all happy to connect with you and speak with you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.